In this vid, I'm going to be doing another deck review. I'll be reviewing wooper9's celebi sawsbuck deck. But before we get started on that, I'd like to make one little announcement, or request I should say, for people that are submitting decks. If you plan on entering a tournament, if you could, or even if you don't plan on entering a tournament, if you could tell me what division you would be in if you were entering a tournament. So would you be a junior, a senior, or a masters? And I don't remember the age cutoffs for all of them, but if anyone really needs to know, they can let me know or just send me your age and I can look it up. But the metagame, or like the big decks the big decks that are run in each division, differ per division. What's good in one division isn't necessarily good in another one. What works with one may flop in another one. So it kind of helps me just to gauge your deck as far as difficulty level. Is it something that's going to stand up to the meta? Like, right, I think for Nationals there were a lot of Gengar variants in the senior division, but there were very few in the Masters, and I don't think there were very many in the junior division either. So, you know, if it's just a recommendation, especially if your deck is all one type, you know, maybe teching in something, especially if your one type is weak to, you know, what the big meta deck is. It just might help me do reviews a little bit better, and especially gauging difficulty, you know, how difficult, you know, should this deck be, or how easy should it be, something like that. But I'll quit blabbering and get right on to wooper9 celebi sawsbuck deck. At first glance, I thought this was another deck that had way too many lines of Pokemon, but as I took a closer look at it, I realized that a lot of them are just one line, like one Pokemon of a type, and really isn't too spread out. However, I'm still going to be recommending that we cut this down quite a bit and just try and solidify some of the main lines, which I think for this deck it's very possible. I don't think this would be a very expensive deck just to straighten out a bit. So let's go ahead and take a look. Your starter you've chosen is Smeargle. Excellent starter. The portrait Poke Power allows you to look at your opponent's hand and copy one of their supporters. Only downside is if they have Juniper in their hand, forces you to toss away your entire hand. So Smeargle is a risky starter, but then again so is Cleffa and any other baby, just because they wake up and your opponent has a Tyrogue. That's an automatic, you know, you're down by one prize. So Smeargle is definitely a good choice. I would recommend, though, that you go up to at least 2 Smeargles, though. I mean, if your one Smeargle is prized, he's not going to be very much of a help as a starter. Some of your rest of your Pokemon lines, I think, are pretty good. You run 2 Celebi Prime, and Celebi Prime, as long as it's active, allows you to attach another grass energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon. So, essentially, you can be attaching 2 energy in one turn, or if you have a switch in hand, you could essentially attach 3. You could have a different Celebi active, and but that's something I haven't really seen that often. So, yeah, it's mainly for attaching that one energy. And then if your opponent is running, let's say, all stage, you know, a stage 2 or stage 1 deck, they don't have a Reshiram, Zekrom, any other strong basic Pokemon, you can always use Time Circle, so which prevents damage done to Celebi by attacks. However, I really wouldn't be too concerned about Time Circle. I would really be more concerned about attaching that extra grass energy, and this is why. You're going to want to stall for quite a while until you get your bench fully powered so that you can use Sawsbuck's Nature Power. It does 20 base damage, but then does 10 more damage for each grass energy attached to both your and your opponent's Pokemon. So even if we assume that, let's say, you know, your opponent doesn't have any grass energy, and it's just you, if you've got, you know, I would hope maybe 6 or 7 grass energy spread around, then you're looking at, you know, 70 to 80 damage. That's a pretty good hit. Horn Leech, which, you know, it's a decent attack, also heals 20 damage, which, you know, assuming you don't get knocked out on the first hit, can be quite useful. The other line that you have running with this that I really, really like is your Superior line. You run a 2-2-1-1 split, one of the healing ability superiors and one of the non-healing superiors. I would recommend that you increase this line. I think this is a very strong line in your deck, as well as a sawsbuck line. Right now you have a 2-2 sawsbuck. I would increase that to a 3-3 and maybe even a 4-4 because I think that's going to be your main attacker. But if you hold it off at 3-3 and can increase your superior line, especially this one has free retreat. You can do Leaf Storm, which heals 20 from each of your grass Pokemon. Superior heals 10 in between turns, and then you just retreat it out for something else while it heals again. So I think this is a really strong line, and yeah, I'd really like to see this be a Celebi Superior Sawsbuck deck. I think would be a very, very strong deck. Some of the other lines, I understand why you have them. The Buffalo, well, it's Buffalon, but I call it the Buffalo. For Revenge, if anyone's knocked out, it does a total of 90 damage instead of 20. This can be useful, but it's really more useful in a deck that runs double colorless energy, and right now you don't have a need to. In fact, we need to run, I think, more grass energy in this deck. You run the one Jirachi to de-evolve your Pokemon, which requires Psychic Energy, which I think is good. You know, see if you can spread some damage around and then de-evolve. But I do like that you only have one Jirachi in. I would drop the Spiritomb. The Spiritomb, all it does is let your shuffle your opponent's hand. Spiritombs are used more, I think, in Gengar variant decks, where you hope that they draw into a Pokemon that you can throw into the Lost Zone. And I really don't think this, a Spiritomb in this deck might actually help your opponent out more, because you're really not going to be taking advantage of their different hand. The 2-2 Banette, I really don't think is necessary either. I think you can drop that. The 2-1 1-1 Espeon, though, I do like. And I'm not sure if I really like the Prime, even though it can use the attacks of the other one. I think if you just go with the 2 Undaunted Espeons, you'll be fine. And actually, while I'm thinking about that, let me pull out an Espeon real quick to show you. I should have done this before. But the Espeon is also another healer. So essentially, I think what this deck is going to do is try and spread some damage and heal yours as well. Solar Suggestion takes 4 damage counters from any of your Pokemon and moves them to any of your opponent's Pokemon in any way you like. This is going to be a good way to spread that damage and hopefully then be able to come in with Jirachi and do some de-evolving. However, it only requires 1 Psychic Energy, and Jirachi only requires a few Psychic Energy. So I think what I'd like to see in this deck is to bring this energy count, switch this up a little bit. You've got 8 Grass and 7 Psychic. I think I would drop your Psychic down to 4 and use those extra spaces for Grass. The more Grass energy you can get out on the field, the more that Sawsbuck the more damage he's going to be doing. So we really, really want that Sawsbuck to be doing a lot of damage. So I think that's a pretty good for your Pokemon line. I definitely say do your Espeon at 2-2. You see if you can increase your superior line. No Banette, increase your Sawsbuck. I think the 2 Celebis are fine. The Buffalo, I think, can be dropped. Keep the Jirachi, keep the Smeargle, maybe increase it by 1, and drop the Spiritomb. So let's go on and look at your trainers and supporters. You've actually got a pretty solid line of supporters. I don't know if you need 2 twins. I do like to run 1 twins in every deck. But 2 twins I only like to really run is if I'm running more than 1 Juniper. And that's just because I'm afraid I'm going to toss out my 1 twins with Juniper, and obviously I don't have a way to get it back. So that's just a suggestion. You do have 1 Juniper in, which is great. You have 2 interviewers in, which I'm quite a fan of interviewers, but I don't know if you really need to. 1 may be alright, but since you're really relying on getting that grass energy and hopefully attaching twice with Celebi, maybe you've got the right idea. Keeping 2 interviewers ensures that you'll be able to use it early enough. You've got 3 communication, which I think is great. 3 junk arm, I think that's great. 3 energy retrieval, also awesome because you don't want to waste those. You don't want to have those grass energy sitting in the discard pile and just, waiting when they could be attached to something to increase Sawsbuck damage. Let's see. I don't think you have a switch in there. I would recommend 1 switch, just so you don't have to waste your energy. But then again, that's up to you, because if you can waste your Psychic Energy, Jirachi can use its Poke Power to hopefully reattach him from the discard pile. Again, that's a bit risky, and I do like to see a switch in every deck. And even just for Smeargle, we don't have Unknown Q anymore, so we can't free retreat that Smeargle. But switch can take care of that for you. I would recommend throwing in a Flower Shop Girl to throw some more Pokemon and some more basic energy back in your discard pile after a few got knocked out. The biggest suggestion, though, is Collector. If you don't have Collector, throwing in some Dual Balls will also work, but I think Collector, you don't really have anything just to search for a supporter to search for Pokemon, so I think this would be huge, and then you can always communicate those back in to pull out evolutions. You can also toss in an Elms or so, but I'm really not a fan of Elms right now. I really prefer the Collector communication combination, and I'm also a big fan of hand refreshers. I don't believe you have any hand refreshers in right now. No, your other supporters are Sage. I really don't like the idea of Sage in this deck just because I don't really want to be throwing out too much stuff. I could see where Sage could be useful if you have energy retrieval in hand, throw out your energy and then just get it back with energy retrieval. But I don't see any, just except for your Juniper, any hand refreshers, so a Pawnt or a Copycat I think would be good to add in. Other than that, though, I think your list is pretty solid. I don't think you need the Pokedex, the 3 Pokedex. I think those spaces would be better reserved for, throwing in the Flower Shop, the Collector, a hand refresher, something like that. And then the other slots, obviously I've recommended quite a bit more to add. We're dropping, or hopefully dropping a few of the Pokemon, so be able to increase that number back up there. So yeah, I think that's pretty good. I really like your Celebi Sawsbuck deck. Like I said, essentially it relies on just moving and manipulating the damage. Superior heals you, the ability Superior heals you, and Espeon moves that damage around. So I really think you've got an interesting idea here, and I hope it works out really well for you. So if you'd like to see your deck reviewed, just send me a PM with your deck list, and ideally what your either what your age is or what division you'll be in, so I can hopefully review your deck a little bit better and compare it to some of the meta decks that you might be facing if you enter a tournament. So, before I end this, my only worry is fire decks are pretty big right now with Emboar and Reshiram and all that stuff. I don't know if you've checked your cards to look into a water tech just to encounter that. That would obviously require a lot of changing to this deck in order to fit a water tech in. So, maybe just rely more on your Espeon if you run into fire decks. Or just hoping that you can, knock them out with your with a fully powered Sawsbuck. But that would be my only really concern with this deck, is running into a lot of fire, because I think fire would just destroy this. But anything else, I think it's got a really good shot. So, again, thank you for watching.